Badlands, running to Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitics with Ghosts. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, a.k.a. the ghost of Base Patrick Henry. I'm actually impressed that I've been here on time. I've spent all the time since the end of Badlands Daily, which went long, at the vet with my dog. My dog's fine, but my dog got into a scruff with my other dog. And lost one of his fingernails, got ripped out, bleeding everywhere. All good, but yeah. So anyway, for a minute there, I was worried that I was going to have to cancel the show, but I got here literally 2 minutes ago, so we are absolutely fine. And there is so much to talk about. It's kind of crazy. I'm going to try not to repeat many of the stories. I'm going to do a few of the big ones from Badlands Daily that we talked on in Badlands Daily, but I'm going to try not to do repetition. So if you watch Badlands Daily, you won't have to listen to me give the same takes over and over again. And if there's a story on here you're expecting me to cover, I probably covered it on a Badlands Daily. So anyway, with that said, I'm streaming from my son's room, so I got a weird green screen thing going on. But let's get a word from one of our sponsors before we go any further.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back in stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queens $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
Yeah, and shout out to Jessica, because I think I've noticed that a lot of the ads that I'm getting on this show are all pre-produced, and I appreciate that because of the way I run the halftime show, so to speak. T. Gretzky, LOL Ghost, did you see Mark Levin advertising his show during John's show? T. Gretzky, if you have I did not see that. If you have a link, please share, and I will look at that. And we'll play that. If there's something to play, we'll play it or look at it on screen. Yeah. So with all that said, let's start with kind of the really big story right now in the zeitgeist, and I think it's an important one. It's not quite geopolitics. I think it kind of borders on geopolitics, but it's certainly something that we've been talking about on this show. And I think it's an important discussion because I think it gets to the heart of what we're going through. And so we only talked about the headline, and then we kind of just did a few comments on Badlands Daily. So we'll go more into the article here and maybe play a few more clips from X. This is New York Times, Michelle Goldberg. And the headline is Megyn Kelly knows which way the winds are blowing. It's from yesterday. Oh, yeah, by the way, October 7th, the anniversary of October 7th today. So happy flying go-kart, paragliding go-kart day. And CanCon was telling me this morning that apparently they're talking about dive bomber go-karts. I haven't seen that one yet, but that sounds like extremely cartoonish. Everything's just getting very cartoonish at this point, and it's hard to know what's even real and what's not. It's probably all fake. Everything's probably fake. Chris is probably right about that. All right, Michelle Goldberg. Megyn Kelly, it seems safe to say, understands her audience since she was pushed. I'm going to make this a little bigger in case you are watching. Since she was pushed out of TV news in 2019. Oh, wow. She's really on the outside now. The biting conservative commentator has built herself an enormous audience online. She has over 4 million subscribers on YouTube. I guess it is enormous when you compare it to the Fox News crowd, because I think like Fox News gets half that many people watching on YouTube, and one of the most popular right-wing podcasts in the country. So it's instructive to see how she's positioned herself in the conservative movement's increasingly acrimonious civil war over Charlie Kirk in Israel. Before Kirk was killed, one of his donors, Robert J. Shillman, reportedly told him he was withdrawing a $2 million pledge to Kirk's organization, Turning Point, because of its relationship with the increasingly anti-Israel podcaster Tucker Carlson. That fact has set off a roiling debate on the right about the degree to which Kirk was becoming disillusioned with Israel, in turn leading to insinuations that Israel had Kirk murdered. Some of the more high-profile people behind these conspiracy theories try to maintain a degree of plausible deniability, insisting in the manner of trolls everywhere that they're just asking questions. Candace Owens, a former colleague of Kirk's, who last year suggested that Judaism is a, quote, pedophile-centric religion that, quote, believes in child sacrifice, end quote, claims that Kirk was about to break with Israel and reunite with her. Quote, he said it explicitly that he refused to be bullied anymore by the Jewish donors. She said on her podcast, asking, quote, and then did he just 48 hours later conveniently catch a bullet to the throat before our onstage reunion, end quote. Carlson has been even more careful. He hasn't made any direct claims, only suggestive analogies. Since the killing, he's talked repeatedly of Kirk's impatience with pro-Israel donors. Then, speaking from the podium at Kirk's memorial, he said that Jesus, like Kirk, was killed for telling the truth. He could picture the scene 2,000 years ago. He said, quote, a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about, quote, what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us, end quote. One of them, in Carlson's telling, suggested, why don't we just kill him? Yeah, well, I doubt this communist Michelle Goldberg, we're going to look into her a little bit. I doubt she's ever read the Bible. She probably doesn't realize that's exactly what is spelled out in the Bible. Not that exact imagery or anecdote, but yeah, Michelle, it's called the Sanhedrin, and the Pharisees, the Jewish elite, they were super corrupt. In the words of Jesus, they were the synagogue of Satan, and they absolutely had him killed. That is like written explicitly in the Bible. But a communist like you probably doesn't know that. And oh, wait a minute, I'm looking at her bio. Wait, let's just look at this real quick. I just pulled up her biography from the New York Times, and it says, "What I cover, I write about politics and culture from a left-leaning feminist point of view. Though I try to seek out stories that challenge my preconceptions." Yeah, I'm sure you really do. Her background, before I joined the Times, I was a columnist at Slate. Oh, wow. Excuse me, I got something in my throat. And my work has appeared in the New Yorker, the Washington Post, the Nation, the New Republic, and many other publications, all of which are sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency. Doesn't really say that, but might as well. My first book, quote, Kingdom Coming, The Rise of Christian Nationalism, end quote, was about religious authoritarianism in American politics, a subject I've been reporting on ever since. Okay, so you actually wrote a book about Christian nationalism. So you should at least have like read the footnotes of the cliff notes of the Bible to know what's written in the Bible. I mean, I would expect that you've done that, but you probably haven't because you're not a real journalist. Man, excuse me, I'm sorry. I had a granola bar before the show, and there's like a piece of granola in my throat. Says her journalistic ethics. As an opinion columnist, I don't claim to be objective. My politics inform most of what I write, but I do strive always to be accurate and fair in addition to getting my facts right or running a correction if I don't. That means never quoting people out of context or omitting important information that might cut against an argument that I'm making. Oh, okay, Michelle. Well, I'm wondering why you're not quoting the Bible here in this piece, because when you're mocking Tucker Carlson for basically paraphrasing the Bible, you don't seem to point that out. Plenty of people, both hardcore, this is back to her article, plenty of people, both hardcore anti-Semites and anxious Jews, thought Carlson was implying that Jews killed Kirk just as they had Jesus. But of course, he never said that. Perhaps the hummus eaters were Romans. I don't think Tucker Carlson was implying or like leaving open to interpretation that the hummus eaters were Romans. I think he was being very clear. The hummus eaters were the Jewish elite. I think that's what he was saying. The whole point of the analogy, Michelle, let me just explain how analogies work, is that you make a point by citing something that is parallel, like conceptually parallel and like and relevant. And often it's either a true historical event or it's like citing a work of fiction that everybody that's universally known, Star Wars or whatever. And you're making a comparison so people can understand what point you're making. And I think the point he was making is that the Jewish elite, the Zionists, killed Charlie Kirk. He was pretty clear about that. I feel that it was a very direct shot. Others have been less cautious. Endless posts on social media blame Israel for assassinating Kirk. The meme became so widespread that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel made a video denying it, which only seemed to fan the flames. Some Zionist conservatives are extremely worried about this increasingly paranoid hostility to Israel in the MAGA movement, and they want to marginalize Carlson and his ilk. Quote, "Cut Tucker loose," end quote, said a headline in the Jewish publication Tablet, writing that he has, quote, "not only embarrassed the administration, but also fractured the president's base, elements of which are now at each other's throats over the words of a glorified podcaster." I don't think he's a glorified podcaster, to be clear. I'm pretty sure he's just a podcaster. Because a glorified podcaster would imply that he's something less than a podcaster and being built up as if he were a podcaster. You need to work on your language and your syntax, Michelle Goldberg. If you had a better editor, they would have explained that problem with your syntax there. I'm happy to give you some notes if you want to reach out to me. The conservative actress Patricia Heaton, a Fox News regular, posted a video about big-name podcasters giving a platform to anti-Semites. Quote, "We're all seeing it," she said. "Many of us are alarmed," end quote. The left, she argued, coddles its extremists. "Don't let that happen in the conservative movement," she pleaded. But it already has. Given her stature on the right, Kelly has come under pressure to denounce Carlson and Owens. She has declined. Quote, "If you need me to condemn Candace or Tucker for their opinions in order to listen to me, then I may not be for you," she wrote on X. Oh, wow. Stunning and brave, Megyn. Quote, "He's a close friend and she is under enough pressure without gratuitous shots from me," end quote. A few days later on the Fifth Column podcast, she said she didn't think Carlson was an anti-Semite, then added, quote, "But I don't really care. I think Tucker's a very important, valuable voice in the national conversation," end quote. There's a lot of like anxiety over people being anti-Semites. It's like, yeah, it's such a stupid word. And by the way, I am going to do a show with Eric Rice, who was on G Money's Rug Pull Radio last Thursday and went through like the whole history of Zionism and in biblical Israel, and a very, very he did a great job explaining why the current national state of Israel is not at all related to the biblical Israel in any way, and that the Semites are actually like the Persians and the Iraqis, and a lot of like the Arabs are actually, they're all Semites, and the people who live in Israel are actually not Semites. And they, I personally think they probably do have some lineage to the I think they are descendants of the Pharisees, but they absolutely clearly interbred with the Turks from Central Asia. the Khazarians in Ukraine, and then went back, like in Eastern Europe, and then went back to Palestine to establish Israel. So I think there's a connection, but it's a very loose connection. And anti-Semite is a meaningless word because if I were anti-Iran, I would be an anti-Semite. If I were anti-Iraq, if I were anti-Arab, if I were anti-Palestinian, I would be an anti-Semite. But an anti-Israeli, it's like, that's more like an anti-Turk or an anti-Eastern European. Just want to be accurate with my language. Last month, Kelly went to Virginia Tech, filling in for Kirk on what was supposed to be his college tour. A student brought up claims the white nationalist Nick Fuentes has made about Israel. He didn't identify which ones, and said he was having a hard time discerning truth from falsehood. Kelly was extremely circumspect in her response. I actually want to play that. I think we played it before. She told the student to trust independent voices over the corporate media, but to avoid those who get too out there unless it's just your jam for fun. She didn't mention Fuentes at all. I have no way of knowing what's in Kelly's heart, but from a business point of view, her hesitation about punching right seems shrewd. Carlson, after all, is not tangential to the MAGA movement. He is one of its most important figures. As of this writing, his podcast is the highest-ranked right-wing show on the Spotify charts, with Owens not far behind. Fuentes has become so influential that, as the New York Times reported last month, both current and former Trump officials are afraid to publicly criticize him. The three of them are far more representative of the American right than their critics. Yeah. So Michelle, here's the thing, sweetheart. We don't buy into this bullshit. Okay. We like to criticize people on our side. People at Badlands like to criticize other people at Badlands. We like to pick apart each other's arguments. We like to bring up counterpoints. We like to, that's how steel sharpens steel. Sitting here and not addressing points that our friends and our colleagues make, or people that maybe that we agree with politically, but don't align with philosophically. That is what sycophants do. That is what groveling slaves do. That is what grifting scumbags do. Okay, and we are none of those things here. We like to seek the truth. We like to talk about whatever subject it is. Obviously, I think I've demonstrated that I'm not afraid to talk about Israel. I'm not afraid to talk about the Jews. I'm not afraid to talk about all of it. And that's why I'm bringing on Eric Rice, because clearly he's not afraid to talk about it either. More information on that later. Let me see. Okay, she's going to talk about Dinesh D'Souza, so I want to keep going a little further. Many pro-Israel conservatives refuse to see this. Under Trump, American conservatism has given itself over to an orgy of berserk hallucinations, nihilistic transgression, and epistemological disorder. Wow. It barely made news in September when Trump shared an AI video promoting med beds, fantasy devices that in QAnon lore can cure all ailments but are selfishly hoarded by evil elites. Yeah, okay. If a young person like the one at Virginia Tech can't figure out what's true and what's not, it's at least in part because the right has systematically undermined the very idea of dispassionate expertise. Yeah, I'm sure that Michelle Goldberg, the ardent feminist that she is always presenting an objective point of view or objective facts. Now conservative Zionists are surprised that the resulting chaos has spun out of their control. Consider Dinesh D'Souza, who is probably best known for 2000 Mules, a conspiracy film about the 2020 election. Awful film, by the way. That film is a total fraud. If y'all aren't familiar with the fraud, it says for which he was sued and had to publicly apologize. Yeah, because the film, I think it used like a map from Ukraine and presented it as Atlanta. It did a bunch of other things that just totally misrepresented the case. Dinesh D'Souza is a total grifter. I'm going to get to him in a minute. That's why I wanted to read this part. Last week, he appeared on the podcast of Laura Loomer, a Trump confidant who once shared a video on X calling the September 11 attacks an inside job. Oh, dear. Together, they bemoaned how successful Owens and Carlson had been in sowing suspicion of Israel. Owens' investigations, D'Souza lamented, quote, never produce a single fact, a single reliable theory that you can work with. They never reach any conclusion, and the moment they run out of gas, a new incendiary accusation comes in its place. Must be frustrating. Yeah, okay, well, let's just jump right into it here. Dinesh D'Souza is an absolute grifting fraud, and I will demonstrate that here in a minute. But before I do, let's jump to let's just prove him wrong. I agree with him that I think Candace Owens does present arguments without facts. Like she's guilty of doing that many times, or she, does things like accuses or speculates that the American founding, the American Revolution may have been an occult psyop because a Catholic priest in London told her so, and she read a book by a British philosopher who, on his own Wikipedia page, says, I have worked closely with MI6 my entire career. Great discernment there, Candace. But this is actually a situation where she does bring some receipts, albeit after Michelle Goldberg's Pulitzer Prize winning article.
Christianity that I was challenging him on personally, like privately. And I was speaking to him about the political pressures of it, the way that I felt because of last year, that it registered to me like more of a cult than a true theology or a religion, or a religious aspect rather. And it was back in February of this year when, out of nowhere, he's the one that actually messaged me and said, and said Catholicism is sounding better and better in February of 2024. This is kind of when we started having that discussion. We should chat soon. Catholicism is looking better and better. Okay. I then offered back to him a chart just showing how the phrase Judeo-Christianity kind of is really associated with the dawn of the nation of Israel. Right. And we did chat about it. We talked about it a lot. And I was thrilled, like I said, and I was being honest that he was attending mass. Okay. But I want to again state that Charlie was not attending Rob McCoy's church. He was attending mass. So it registered to me again as somewhat disingenuous when Pastor Rob McCoy came out and effectively asked me to, stop looking into all of the things that had happened in the lead up to Charlie Kirk's assassination, or at least asking me to pause it rather would be more fair of an interpretation until the memorial, right? I'm going to jog your memory here. Here is what Pastor Rob McCoy wrote on his Instagram after I exposed the now infamous Hamptons meeting, which took place. He wrote this: Charlie Kirk was my friend and I was his pastor. I want to simply say this regarding Candace Owens. Charlie Kirk was a friend to Candace and never publicly spoke poorly of her, although he disagreed with her. He never operated nor entertained gossip or innuendo concerning Candace. My only comment I offer regarding Candace is this: I only wish that at this tragic time of mourning, she would be the friend to Charlie that he was to her. He would never have treated Candace or her family in such a way had, God forbid, this tragedy been hers. All friend loves at all times. Proverbs. Now, I want to be very clear. If Charlie was a friend of mine, I sure hope if I was assassinated in front of the world that he would raise hell to figure out what actually took place on that day. That's not being a friend. A friend is not someone who stays silent when lies are being told by the federal government. That's not a friend. Again, emotionally manipulative. The family can't have you finding out who actually killed him. The family can't have you looking into those things of who was pressuring him behind the scenes. That's not good for the family. It bothers me. I have to be honest with you. That bothers me. I don't even like that, to the untrained eye, he's kind of representing himself.
Yeah. And so I went through it on Badlands Daily this morning about how that, like, I 100% agree with Candace Owens there. 100% agree that it's ridiculous to use emotional blackmail and say you're somehow hurting the family by trying to get to the truth of what actually happened. If you're earnestly trying to do that, it's one thing to invent theories and just spin wheels just for clicks, but there's obviously a lot to the theory. And you remember, I held back from coming out against Israel after the trial. I mean, my first instinct was that it was Israel. My first instinct was that, I said 6 months ago or 8 months ago, back in December, I told John and Burning Bright on DPH that this was going to be the end of Charlie Kirk. The whole Syria, Middle East thing, when Assad got overthrown and ISIS took over Syria, and Israel was cheering and the Zionists were cheering and the Republican Party was cheering for a bunch of head choppers taking over Syria. I was like, this is the end of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, because he's going to have to choose at some moment. There's going to be a Sophie's choice where he's going to have to choose between his integrity and toeing the line for Israel. Now, I didn't think they were going to kill him, but I did assume that he was going to have to either turn on Israel or just forever be a shill, like forever be remembered as disreputable. And of course that moment came, and we can see that with the text messages that. So she shared the one about the Catholics. Let me just scroll forward. Here we go. Here it is.
me for telling the truth about the pressure that he was facing. Take a look. So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, oh. Charlie writes, Jewish donors play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. And somebody writes, a donor writes, please do not invite Candace. That might feel good short term, but it's not good long term. In my opinion, like all groups, you're going to get a wide variety of opinions. That nasty free will thing that God bestowed on us makes life frustrating at times after the dust settles a bit, maybe. So again, this is 48 hours before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was very clear, and he was
48 hours before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And I'm about to play a corroborating video from Charlie Kirk's good friend and producer who's going to tell you that those text messages are 100% real. So we know those text messages are real. She's not making this up. That nasty little thing. Sorry, I'm getting a call from my wife. Just have to make sure that well, the house isn't on fire because I'm here, but yeah, make sure something else isn't on fire. That nasty little thing called free will that God gives all of us, right? Yeah, I mean, this is a pattern that I've noticed from all of the pro-Israel people, whether they're Jewish or Christian, whatever their public identity is, they all view free speech as a problem. They all view free speech not as this blessing that was bestowed upon us by God that gives us the ability to converse and seek truth and, refine ideas, but they see it as this really unfortunate plague that has to be contained. Otherwise it'll get out of control and hurt people. And that is a consistent thing that you will see from Lindsey Graham to Mark Levin to Laura Loomer to all of them. They all think that. And consistently, these are the people who support Israel. That's normally like the number one identifier. A lot of times they're pro-Ukraine, but I think I don't know if Laura Loomer's pro-Ukraine. I'm pretty sure she's not, but she's definitely pro-Israel. It's always the same thing, man. It's like a formula. Like they make these people in a lab and churn them out. Now I want to play this video. I was trying to find the shortest one. This one's 3 minutes, 26 seconds. I'm a little tempted to play the Julian's Rum one because he says Julian's Rum posts the texts were real. Your move retards. It's a 28-second video. Let's see what he says here, and then maybe we'll play the longer one.
Started this show to address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain that has been made known and released by Candace Owens. And I just want to address it head on because, that was a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there. I first started this show to address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain.
All right,
that
I want to,
known.
That's not nearly good enough. I want to see this longer one from Shadow of Ezra.
Charlie was loyal to people that he had shared history with, right? He was asked, I think this may be what you were about to say, Blake.
And this guy, I believe, is the producer of the Charlie Kirk show. I think this guy was the producer. So he was the guy sitting there like running the show for Charlie while Charlie was, speaking into the microphone.
He was asked about Candace before in public, and he would always say, listen, we're friends. He would never say an ill word about her. And if people, tried to force him to do that about Tucker or whatever, he would always be defiant because he didn't want to be morally blackmailed.
Exactly. Charlie was loyal to people who had ever been friends to him, whether it was very old donors or just people who had worked with Turning Point.
Yep.
And as long as they were not attacking him, he would not air any dirty laundry or, frankly, any disagreements he had with people. He did disagree with Candace on the Israel issue. He disagreed with Tucker on the Israel issue. But he also recognized Tucker had positions they agreed on. Tucker was a useful voice in the conservative movement on many things. And so he invited him to events, and, they were popular events. And so he would react. Sometimes people would just say, yeah, don't invite him or we're going to, cut off some large donation. And that would make him angry. He would say this, yeah, as you say, this is moral blackmail.
Speed
And
us up.
he's this Scottish guy. He's combative. His reaction to that is, the classic, like, screw me, no, screw you. That sort of thing.
He had, and it's one of my favorite parts about Charlie is just how defiant and independent he was.
Yeah,
he was never going
he
to
could not be controlled by other people.
You could not buy him. He was not bought and paid for. You could not control him with money. It just wasn't the way he was wired. He didn't actually care about money that much.
And so what's going on here? What is going on here? You guys can look up what the text says. What is going on is Charlie, as I mentioned, he loved Israel. He cared about Israel. He cared about the Holy Land. And he was aware there was a surge of anti-Israel sentiment on the right. Charlie thought seriously about this issue and was trying to chart a path forward for people who were sympathetic to Israel. He was playing the good cop here. He was saying, you guys don't realize how bad it could potentially get. You have to change your PR. That's why he writes a letter to Bibi. You are losing the PR war. You need to change how you do your PR. You need to change your messaging to the American right. You might need to change what you expect from us, that you're not going to be able to count on just, for example, unlimited military aid from America. That's just not going to be tenable going forward. So maybe it has to be a more passive relationship. Maybe you need to give more support towards America. Some more support towards America in, for example, opposing Islamic migration into America. That's one thing he thought we could ally on. And he was trying to do all of this because he cared about the relationship and wanted to chart a way forward on it. And he would feel angry and upset when
opposing Islamic migration into America. Why is that something that you have to convince the Israeli elite, the Jewish elite, to oppose? Like, what? Well, when you stop and you think about it, you think about where are those people coming from? Well, they're coming from the Middle East, right? They're coming from Syria. They're coming from Iraq. They're coming from Palestine. They're coming from all the places that, Lebanon, a ton, like my best friend growing up was Lebanese. Ton of Lebanese migrants have come in since the 60s and 70s. They're coming from the Middle East. They're coming from all the places that Israel happens to want to annex and take over. So getting rid of those people and sending them somewhere else, that actually does align with Israeli values and their incentive structure, right? They don't care that they're coming to America. That's your problem, America. America has 300 million people purportedly. They can handle tens of millions of Muslims. They can deal with it. We have enough over here in the Middle East. I hate the way that Turning Point's handling this, by the way. Turning Point looks like the absolute bad guy. They could not look worse. I completely agree with Candace Owens. These guys are not acting like Charlie Kirk's friends. They're acting like people who are scrambling to cover up something that they don't want to get out of control. I want to finish listening to this.
people would react to this by blowing up and suggesting he was an anti-Semite or a hater. He would get angry about that because he knew it was untrue. And then he would sometimes vent about this.
Yeah.
He would vent about this to people who understood that, who were pro-Israel people who shared his view on that issue.
Well, exactly. And just why I, didn't share this publicly, it was because this was a private message between Charlie and some people, some Jews and non-Jews, where he was, frustrated. He was frustrated. And that would have felt like a betrayal to my friend because he never said anything like that publicly in like a show, right? He said things with Megyn that were very, like, we just played them. I went on Alex Clark's show and I felt like I did a faithful job of expressing
betrayal of your friend. Betrayal of your friend, Andrew. What are you talking about, bro? These people might have killed your friend. And you're going to sit here and you're going to say, I didn't want to share this information, even though clearly this guy was part of the group text. He knew Charlie Kirk said this 48 hours before he was shot to some of the richest people out there, people that were giving them millions of dollars, who had everything to lose by Charlie Kirk coming out and becoming anti-Israel, or not even becoming anti-Israel, just questioning Israel, Why is the concern here not what happened to my friend? With friends like this, I mean, who needs enemies? Who needs rivals when your friends are willing to sit in your seat that you podcasted from for years and like over your dead corpse and say this kind of crap? Like, dude, again, y'all know that I was not a Charlie Kirk fan. Like, I was not coming to Charlie Kirk's rescue when he was getting attacked by people. I was one of the people criticizing him. But I am disgusted with these guys. These people are disgusting. They are absolutely obsessed with money and power and clout and party of false decorum nonsense. They are not at all interested in truth, because if they were, they would be entertaining all the things that are being said. This guy, Andrew, like, hosted every single day of Charlie's show since he was killed, knew this text message was sent, knew these allegations were real, and didn't say anything? What? Dude. Cash Patel, you better be investigating all of this. Like, I'm not convinced at all the FBI isn't involved. I mean, my suspicion would be that if Mossad was behind this, if Turning Point USA, Mossad, the Israel lobby, like all those people, if bad actors from all those groups were somehow involved, you'd have to think that there are some bad actors in there from the intelligence community. Maybe the FBI, probably the CIA. Again, all speculation on my part, but again, I waited to come out with this take. I kept my powder dry. I was going to do it on Friday, 2 days after he was shot. And at the last minute, I was like, you know what? I don't need to pour fuel on this fire. Let's wait and see what happens. And then I saw this kind of behavior from guys like Andrew. I saw this kind of behavior, and I was so disgusted with it that on the following Tuesday, I had to come out and give my take. I was like, this is absolutely the people with the most motive here are the people who didn't want Charlie Kirk to change his public stance on Israel. Absolutely ridiculous. And you are a really shitty friend, Andrew. That's all I'll say about that. A really shitty friend. Now, getting back to Dinesh D'Souza, because let's talk about this grifter. There's all kinds of grifters all over the place, and they're all exposing themselves right now. I have a post that I put up about him. Here it is. All right. So Dinesh D'Souza, he put up this post. He says, Jesus was a Jew, not a Christian. He didn't practice Christianity. He attended synagogue and kept the Sabbath. He taught out of the Hebrew scriptures, which were the only ones he knew. He claimed to be the fulfillment, not the repudiation of the Hebrew scriptures and prophets. That's actually not true. He was the repudiation. He was the repudiation of not only the Pharisees, but the problems with with Hebrew scripture. There were issues he took with the scripture. He took issue with the fact that the way the scripture was being interpreted was that man was made for the Sabbath, that men were beholden to the Sabbath, meaning on Saturday, you're not supposed to do anything. You're not supposed to lift a finger. And the example he'd always give was, if your lamb fell into a hole, would you not reach down and pull your lamb out of the hole in order to save him? Like, so ridiculous. So, and by the way, like the Judaism that's practiced today, Dinesh, is not the same Judaism that Jesus practiced. It's called Rabbinic Judaism. It puts a heightened emphasis on the elite, on the Pharisees, on the Sanhedrin, to interpret the scripture however they see fit, and then they become the earthly masters, the gatekeepers of the religion. That's what, yeah. And they also think Jesus is burning in hell. So I showed the picture of him with Reagan, obviously a very young Dinesh. And I said, did you know that Dinesh D'Souza was a policy advisor in the Reagan administration, and his father was a big pharma executive at Johnson & Johnson? He went to Ivy League schools and is a lifelong member of the neocon elite. That's completely true. If you go read Dinesh D'Souza's Wikipedia. He spent his entire life surrounded by the upper crust of society. His father was a big pharma executive, Johnson & Johnson. He went to the best schools for high school, college, graduate school. He got plugged right into the Reagan administration. He worked as a policy advisor in the Reagan administration. There were so many bad people who worked in the Reagan administration. I mean, Reagan, of course, is remembered as like this great president. Donald Trump, funny enough, Donald Trump actually in 1987, when he publishes The Art of the Deal, actually said he thought Reagan was like one of the more overrated presidents. He didn't actually think he was that great of a president. And that take has aged very well, because Reagan actually, a lot of really bad things happened under Reagan. And yeah, I mean, obviously George Bush Sr. was his vice president, the godfather of the deep state. Okay, so I think we can, well, there's one last thing I want to show on Dinesh D'Souza, because so Dinesh D'Souza's new Hasbara film, this is from Chris Minahan of Info Lib News, and that's a great follow if you're not following at Info Lib News. He always puts out some good stuff. Dinesh D'Souza's new Hasbara film, it's called The Dragon's Prophecy, features Netanyahu declaring that Jesus was a Jewish teacher.
Say a word about the role of biblical archaeology in affirming the presence of the Jews, going back not just to the time of Christ, but going back 2,000 years before that.
First of all, look at Christ himself. He wasn't a Palestinian teacher, he was a Jewish teacher. with a Jewish name, Yeshua. His father was Yosef, Joseph. These are all Hebrew names. Where did Jesus turn the tables on the money changers? Where? In Nepal? Perhaps in Singapore?
No way.
Of course not.
No
It was
way.
in the Jewish temple.
The Dragon's Prophecy in theaters October.
Okay, I thought he was trying to say that he was flipping the tables on Palestinians. Wow, that was what a shameless assertion by Netanyahu. And yeah, Dinesh, you need to go read your Bible again. Jesus was repudiating the corrupt elite in the Jewish temple, and he flipped over the tables and he said, "Damn all of you Pharisees, you pit of vipers! You are of your father the devil. You are the sons of Satan." That's what he said. He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers. The people who make peace will be remembered. Are the sons of God, and the sons of Satan are the Pharisees, the Jewish elite." And it's not because they're Jewish, by the way. It's because of the way they act. It's because of the way they act. It's because of the value system, their obsession with money, their obsession with their greedy power, like all of that. That's what makes them sons of Satan. And because the Pharisees turned on Jesus, Jesus and Jerusalem effectively turned on Jesus. Jesus said, he condemned Jerusalem, and he said, every stone in this temple will be torn down. There won't be a stone left standing. The whole temple will be torn down. And 30 years later, 40 years later, the Romans tore down the temple, and the Jews were all dispersed around the world. Unbelievable. Okay, let's talk about Netanyahu a little more, because Netanyahu, talk about grifting scumbags. Wait. Before we go there, I did have this tab pulled up. Megyn Kelly. So going back to Michelle Goldberg's article,
some of them seem kind of true, but it's hard to find true information anywhere. Where would you find good, true,
great question.
Information?
That is a great question.
For some reason, this is not loading well. Okay, so she was at Virginia Tech. I actually posted this video too, because Chris Minahan posted it, and I posted it as well. I reposted it as well. This is ridiculous. I want you to listen to what Megyn Kelly says here. I could not disagree with what she says here more.
So there's a lot of videos and claims out there, like conspiracy theories, like Nick Fuentes talks about them a lot, about Israel. And some of them seem kind of true, but it's hard to find true information anywhere. Where would you find good, true,
great question.
Information?
That is a great question. I'm sure you guys all have this experience, right? Like, what's real? You hear people who you respect, like, saying stuff that sounds like crazy. And you're like, did we land on the moon? Right? They can make you rethink anything. And it is an ongoing battle. It's going to be a really hard battle for all of you because you're young and you're going to have years of dealing with this. My advice to you is to find one or two people who you know you can trust.
No.
And you'll know those people because they will tell you the bad news for your side. They will not just keep whispering sweet nothings in your ear every day when you turn on their podcast or the news or what have you. And once you find those two people, stick with them. Don't trust a platform that has an agenda that's got corporate backers. You know, when I was at Fox, I did not realize that we were funded by Pfizer. But we were. There was a reason we weren't allowed to say certain things on the air. We tried to talk about what was causing autism and whether it was a vaccine back in 2005 at Fox News. It was not going to happen. So I would recommend choosing someone from the independent lane. Of course, I'm biased, but I submit to you I'm an option for you. Ben Shapiro's another great option for you. There's a bunch of us in this lane who you can trust. And then stick with those people who don't get too out there, unless that's just your jam for fun. But I will say, once you sort of let those earworms get in there, it can kind of corrupt your thinking. So choose people who are super factual.
Thank you. Jesus is Lord.
Amen.
You have to be careful, guys, because some of those ideas are very contagious, and they will corrupt you. If you get bad information, it will literally take over your brain, and you will turn into a bad person because evil thoughts will penetrate your mind. Megyn Kelly is an absolute shill. I don't care that she's like trying to redeem herself right now. She always is like somebody who I found is like almost redeems herself, but then she just falls flat on her face all over again. Trump, used to ragdoll her around the stage whenever they would be together because she's just so bad. She's so bad at this. You didn't know that Pfizer was sponsoring Fox News when you would cut to a commercial break and a Pfizer commercial would play. You didn't realize that they were sponsoring your content. I could list you just off the top of my head, like most of Badlands sponsors from doing all the ad reads. Like, what? Like, you don't know that Pfizer was sponsoring Fox News, then you are a very uninformed person. And obviously you were just put out there to be performative and you weren't actually doing any sort of real investigative journalism. Not a very smart person. Two, I'm very biased because I'm an independent journalist. You're an independent journalist. You worked for a corporate, but the biggest corporate news organization, propaganda organization in the world, for however many years you were there. The only reason you left is because you saw an opportunity to leverage a social trend, which was the Me Too movement, where you accused Roger Ailes of doing something inappropriate with you. There probably was some sort of like lawsuit or settlement or whatever. And then you went on to create, as Michelle Goldberg explains, one of the biggest podcasts on the quote unquote right? Like, yeah, okay. And then she says, you should listen to me. If you find yourself questioning Israel, you should go listen to Ben Shapiro. What? Like Ben Shapiro is going to give you the truth about Israel? Okay. And then finally, let's just get to like the core of what she's arguing here. In order to find truth, you should find one or two people that you trust, and then you should just stick with them. And whatever they say, that should be your worldview. Wow. That, like, in a nutshell, is the mainstream media. She is the mainstream media, by the way. She is. Corporate backers, I wonder who sponsors her content. I guarantee you it's corporations. I guarantee you it's large corporations with very large marketing budgets. That's probably who sponsors her content now. No, let me tell you what you do. You go out and you get as much information as you can. You don't limit yourself to one or two people. You get as much information as you can. If you find yourself repulsed by somebody, by like one of these content creators, go listen to them. Go force yourself to listen to 20 minutes of them ranting on any subject. Especially if it's a subject where you think you already understand the subject inside and out. Go see what their take is on it. Like, that's a good litmus test. If you think you understand a subject, go see what the other side is saying, what these other people are saying about it. Source documents. Go read as many source documents as you can. Go to the source as much as you can. If John Harrell or Gordon McCormick or Ben Shapiro or Megyn Kelly are telling you that the government said something, go find where the government said it. Go find the official who said it. Go find the video clip. Go find the document. Like, don't just take our word for it that the government said something. Like, oh my gosh, man, this woman is these people are just so bad at this stuff, and they're trying to corral you back into the slaughterhouse. It's so shameful, but it's important. This is why I wanted to spend some time looking at this, because these people are trying to control the narrative again. And then here's the Tablet Magazine article that they said, cut Tucker loose, get rid of Tucker, right? And look, opinions vary on Tucker, and I understand why, but it's important to understand it, like, realize what they're doing to Tucker right now. What they're doing to Tucker right now is what they did. They did the same thing to Kanye, and they're going to do the exact same thing to Donald Trump when the time comes. Trump is going to be next. When Trump turns on Israel, and he's going to have to here soon, he's delaying it as long as he possibly can, because I think he wants everybody to figure it out on their own. He doesn't want to think for you. Go think for yourself. Don't wait for Trump to give you permission to think for yourself. Go think for yourself. Go do the research. Eric Rice, the guy I'm going to have on, he explained to G-Money that he was an oil executive. Like, I don't know if he was an oil executive. He worked in the oil industry, had a very good career, and basically left it because he realized it was how bad everything was. And then he just started reading. He just started reading. And after reading lots and lots of books and lots of perspectives, he then developed an opinion on all this stuff, and he's now highly informed on it. That's how you do it. It takes time. There's no shortcuts. When somebody asks, where do you go to get the truth? Well, that's not the point. The point is not to go to an authority to get the truth. The point is to find the truth for yourself. And that takes time, and it takes dedication, and it takes commitment. And you can cut corners by finding people who seem to be informed on certain subjects, taking in their information, and then going to other sources on the same subject, taking in other information, right? I mean, that's how you cut the corners, but because nobody has time to research everything. But insane for these people to tell you not to go get multiple perspectives. Absolutely shameful. All right, so let's pivot to Netanyahu because why not? Like, let's keep getting Ghost's blood pressure up. I shouldn't get upset over this stuff. I know what these people are, but it is what it is. All right, so I want to look at RT. So RT posted this video, and I don't know where this is from. This is from a Netanyahu interview from, I think, yesterday or over the weekend.
Continental.
And we played this on Badlands Daily, but I'm going to go ahead and play it again.
Iran is developing now ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000 kilometer range. What does that mean? They add another 3,000 kilometers, and they've got under their atomic guns, New York City in target, Washington, Boston, Miami, Mar-a-Lago. Okay? So that is a very great danger. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people who are not necessarily rational and who chant death to America. Iran is developing now ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000.
Okay, so what he is threatening, I think it's a threat. I think that's him threatening Mar-a-Lago. He's threatening Trump, in my opinion. I think he's, whoops, accidentally, did I unshare my screen? No. I just accidentally, I went to the wrong tab. We'll go to this one. But he's threatening Trump, in my opinion. I think he's making it very clear. And Trump and him are doing this dance right now. There's a dance that's happening. There's a cat and mouse where Netanyahu at this point understands what Trump's doing. Trump he has to understand it. He has to understand that Trump is positioning himself to walk away from this whole Israel clusterfuck scot-free. And that's why Netanyahu is trying to appeal directly to the American people and go around Trump, basically. Because I think he knows Trump isn't going to just turn on Netanyahu until he absolutely has to. Oh my gosh. Okay, man. All right, I'm going to finish Israel. I'm going to finish Netanyahu, and then we're going to go to the next subject. Man, wow. Just saw an article come across the screen that I want to pull up. So this is from the Times of Israel. Prime Minister's office reports progress in talks on Gaza deal as top Israeli U.S. negotiators to join. Israeli officials tells or TOI, which is Times of Israel, that there is optimism, but very cautious, warns Hamas can add obstacles at any moment and leave. Terror group hails glorious success of October 7, 2 years on. Negotiations in Sharm el-Sheikh for a Gaza ceasefire hostage deal based on U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal have made progress, the Prime Minister's office said Tuesday, as Egypt's top diplomat said that an American delegation led by White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will soon join the negotiation. An official from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office told the Times of Israel that there was optimism, but very cautious, while warning Hamas can add obstacles at any moment and leave, as can Israel. Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer, a top confidant of Netanyahu, who is heading the Israeli negotiating team, will depart Wednesday for the talks, the official added. Speaking earlier at a joint press conference with his German counterpart, Johan Wadaful, Egyptian Foreign Minister Badir Adaladi said they had a long conversation with Steve Witkoff, who is expected in Egypt in the coming hours. Alongside Witkoff's Trump's son-in-law and Middle East advisor, Jared Kushner, is also expected to join the indirect talks that resumed Monday in the resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh, with the Axios news site reporting that Trump and his top security advisors met with the pair before they departed. Witkoff and Kushner were architects of Trump's 20-point plan, which calls for gradual Israeli withdrawal and the release of all remaining hostages within 72 hours of the start of a truce, among other conditions. The two briefed the group on the state of the talks, which included Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Chief of State Susie Wiles, according to the report. And you have to think that, remember, Susie Wiles, for a minute there, in 2020, worked on Netanyahu's re-election campaign. So she probably knows a lot of these people personally. She knows a lot of the people who are around Netanyahu. She wouldn't necessarily be as read in, or know personally, like Smotrich or Ben Gvir, like the radicals, because they weren't in the picture yet. They probably were in the proximity, like in the vicinity, but like on the periphery. But they weren't in Netanyahu. Netanyahu didn't bring them in until December 2022, after he had lost the support from the moderates, from the center right. Okay. And so I want to. So yeah, they're having talks in Egypt. Trump later told reporters at the White House that we're in very serious negotiations in the Gaza war and bring broader peace to the Middle East. Quote, I think there's a possibility we could have peace in the Middle East, something even beyond the Gaza situation. We want a release of the hostages immediately, etc. He said in an Oval Office press conference alongside Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. That was this morning. So our team is over there now. Another team just left, and literally every other country in the world has supported the plan, he continued, which is true. Quote, there's a real chance that we could do something, Trump added, later declaring, we are very close to making a deal in the Middle East that will bring peace to the Middle East. Yeah, unless the Israelis don't accept it, which is probably what's going to happen. But again, like, this is like the 5D chess was not what's happening right now. The 5D chess happened 3 years ago when Netanyahu was put with his back up against the wall. The 5D chess happened 6 years ago when 3 felony charges were brought against Netanyahu. The 5D chess happened 3 years ago when Netanyahu was put with his back up against the wall, forced to turn to the most radical zealots in Israel to bring into his coalition in order to come back in as prime minister. He needed the support in the Knesset, so he went to the most radical people who would never otherwise sniff a minister. Well, maybe they would, but would never be in the security cabinet. They would never be in the highest positions of it, like under a more moderate regime. There's just other people that would fill those positions before them. Not necessarily saying that those people who would come before them wouldn't share some of their views. Like, I think Jewish supremacy is a cultural aspect of Israeli life. I think that doesn't mean every person who lives in Israel is a Jewish supremacist, but a lot of them do have that supremacy view of not necessarily that the other people have to suffer, but just that Jewish interests have to come first. And even if that means a situation where you have an ethno-state, which is what they have now, where Christians are not going to get a fair shake, Muslims are not going to get a fair shake, and those other religions should be met with suspicion and paranoia in order to maintain the protection of the Jewish community. Okay. So going to the next article, we had a pretty hilarious moment from Trump, and that was this one over the weekend. Trump and Netanyahu on Gaza talks. You're always so effing negative. When Hamas came back with a yes, but to President Trump's Gaza peace proposal on Friday, Trump called the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss what he saw as good news. Netanyahu felt differently. Quote, Bibi told Trump this is nothing to celebrate and that it doesn't mean anything. A U.S. official with knowledge of the call told Axios. Trump fired back, quote, I don't know why you're always so effing negative. I think he said fucking negative, but I just said effing because I try not to swear as much on this show. This is a win. Take it. Why it matters, the exchange, which is a second U.S. official confirmed, reflects how determined Trump is to push through Netanyahu's reservations and convince him to end the war if Hamas will make a deal. Again, this is coming from Barak Ravid and Mark Caputo. We talked about these guys last week. They are signal, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to reporting what's happening in the White House, reporting what the Trump administration is happening in the White House, and those could be two separate things. What's actually happening and what Trump's people are saying is happening could be two different things, but the narrative is what's important. What the Trump administration wants you to think is happening is the important thing to report, and that's what they are reporting. And so here's another article from Barack Ravid from yesterday where Trump says, he says, I said, BB, this is your chance for victory. President Trump told Axios on Saturday, we are close to a peace deal in Gaza and said he'll push to finalize it in the next few days. Quote, I said, BB, this is your chance for victory. He was fine with it, Trump told me. He's got to be fine with it. This is Barack Ravid interviewing Trump. He has no choice. With me, you've got to be fine. Trump's public messaging and behind-the-scenes diplomacy on Friday brought Israel and Hamas closer than ever to ending a war that began almost exactly 2 years ago with Hamas's attack of October 7th, 2023. It goes on just to lay out a lot of the things that have happened. And then cites some of Trump's True Social posts from last week. What they're saying, this is an important little caveat. We had great receptivity for our plan. Every country of the world in favor. BB is in favor. Hamas went a long way. They want to do it. Now we need to get close. Now we will need to close it, Trump said. Trump said Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was very helpful in pressing Hamas to move forward with the release of hostages. Quote, Erdogan helped a lot. He's a tough guy, but he's a friend of mine, and he was great, Trump said. There you go. A U.S. official told Axios that Trump spoke to Erdogan on Friday ahead of Hamas's response and asked him to make sure Hamas didn't say no. Quote, President Trump told Erdogan, I did a lot for you, and now I need you to do this, the U.S. official said. That's exactly how I think Trump operates. Is I think he said, hey, I helped you out back then. I need you to capitulate and do favors. You know who taught him that, by the way? Who was very famous for doing that? Roy Cohn, his old lawyer, who's passed away decades ago. But Roy Cohn, who became Trump's lawyer when Trump was very young, he was known for that. He was known for favors. And I think Cohn learned that from, he was a mob lawyer. He learned that from the mob. Favors are almost more important than anything else, because if somebody owes you a favor, you can call on them to do that favor whenever you want. And there's really nothing nefarious about it, because a favor is just a request. They can always say no, even if they owe you. It's not like you're like leveraging them or blackmailing them to do it. But, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. It's a quid pro quo, right? This is an interesting little tidbit too. Trump told Axios the war in Gaza isolated Israel internationally and stressed that one of his goals in ending it is to restore Israel's international standing. Quote, Bibi took it very far and Israel has lost a lot of support in the world. Now I am going to get all that support back, he said. I believe him when he says that like that's his goal. But you can't force people to like you. You can't legislate people to like you. You can't say, well, you have to like Israel. No, they don't. Israel needs to demonstrate that it's a worthy partner. Like if it can't demonstrate that it's a worthy partner, then no one's going to want to partner with it. And that's kids on the playground figuring out how to get along with one another, and they need to figure it out too. Big Brother is done fighting your battles for you. To that point, from RT from today, U.S. gave Israel $21.7 billion in military aid during the Gaza conflict. The Pentagon has also spent more than $10 million on operations across the Middle East since October 7th. Number seems a little low. I wonder if it's more than that, but it says the U.S. has provided Israel with $21.7 billion in U.S. In military assistance during the 2 years of the conflict in Gaza. A new report has said the paper by the Costs of War Project at Brown University's Watson School of International and Public Affairs was released on Tuesday, the second anniversary of October 7th incursion into Israel by Palestinian armed group Hamas. Yeah, and then it just goes on to cite a bunch of statistics about the war and surrounding the war. And then there was one more element of this that I wanted to touch on, which is from today's Badlands News Brief. If you're not subscribed to the Badlands News Brief, you should go to badlands.substack.com, Subscribe to the news brief. I write about this stuff every single day. And Ash puts it together. A lot of great takes in there. Let's see. Oh, well, I guess I didn't talk about the follow-up article. So Trump telling Netanyahu why you have to be so effing negative. Them seeding that into the zeitgeist is Trump undermining Netanyahu while propping him up. And then here, that was from a day or two ago. This is from this morning, late last night. Trump pretty sure there will be a Gaza deal, denies telling the prime minister to not be so effing negative. And again, this is just Trump playing games. He's playing games. He's publicly defending Netanyahu, and then behind the scenes, he's telling Barack Ravid and Mark Caputo to print stuff that makes Netanyahu look like an idiot. And, it's game theory, man. It's game theory. So the other article that I wanted to talk about was this one. This is from the National Pulse. Foreign agent filing reveals Israel-backed plan to geofence churches, track and target phones of Christians. So it says, what happened? This is from William Upton. National Pulse, I believe, is Raheem's Kassam's outlet. And here's Raheem's article right here. So yes. It says, what happened? Federal Government Foreign Agents Restriction Act, FARA, filings reveal a group called Show Faith by Works, LLC, with the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs serving as the principal, is planning to launch an influence campaign targeting Christian churches and organizations in the Western United States with digital ads in a mobile museum. Okay, so just to be clear, this is a NGO called Show Faith by Works, LLC, but the principal at the NGO is the government of Israel, or the government of Israel, is the foreign ministry, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel. That is just absolutely insidious. And here's a Times of Israel article also reporting the same thing. Israel to spend up to $4.1 million in bid to bolster support among Christians in the West. Because Christians are too dumb to think for themselves. They can't figure any of this stuff out. They have to be told what to think. So, of course, Israel is going to tell you what to think. Who was involved? Show by Faith Works, LLC, the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Christian churches and universities in the United States. When and where? Filing was made on September 27, 2025. Key quote, we will target and distribute pro-Israel information online and through targeted geofencing and digital online tools, end quote. The FARA filing reads, continuing, quote, we will have teams of people reaching out to churches and pastors and possibly even Christian social media influencers. Some of this is still undecided and fluid, but these are the outlets we have planned and proposed. Impact, while Show Faith Works LLC's filing suggests its primary goal is tourism promotion, it is telling that some of or all of the budget comes from the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs and not the Ministry of Tourism. That's a good point, indicating the ad campaign serves to influence politics more than anything else. I just want to see if I don't think they name any specific targets. Times of Israel doesn't name any either, as far as I could tell. Okay, but it does say this. The documents filed last week under the Foreign Agents Registration Act reveal that Show Faith by Works LLC will execute what it bills as the largest Christian church geofencing campaign in U.S. history. Wow. A newly formed company with a San Diego address, Show Faith by Works, is run by Chad Schnitzker, a prominent Christian conservative activist in California. The initiative is designed to reach churchgoers with digital ads that are explicitly pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian, while dispatching a mobile October 7th experience exhibit to church parking lots with Christian colleges. Wow, an October 7th experience. I wonder what that's going to be like. Is that going to be like you get to live through, the bloody murder of October 7th? You can re-experience it yourself, what it was like to be in the Holocaust. And it goes on to mention Brad Parscale, which I think we talked about Parscale last week. Parscale, who was a Trump campaign digital director, he's also like a part of the whole Hasbara campaign. he's taking money from Israel to promote their buffoonery. So anyway, this is just more of the same, man. More of the same. They want Christian pastors to be preaching from the pulpit politics and telling you what to think and telling you not to follow the teachings of Christ. And, you know, I feel like let me take this down. I feel like I've been like pretty patient and pretty like I've been inching into this for the past 2 years, you know, but Christian Zionists need to understand something. If you are beholden to earthly masters, you cannot be beholden to God. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve a political agenda or a government and blindly worship it and basically take whatever it says at face value as the absolute truth and also remain true and faithful to God. That is explicitly what Jesus meant when he said you can't serve two masters. You can only serve one master. So you either remain faithful to the teachings of Christ, which are mercy, peace, patience, grace, forgiveness, or you adopt the mentality of Bibi Netanyahu, which is vengeance, blood, no forgiveness. We're gonna fight and kill every single person who's ever wronged. As Gideon Sar said, anyone who's ever wronged Israel should be completely annihilated from existence. That's the more moderate. He's considered more moderate than a lot of the other people in Netanyahu's cabinet. That's the current foreign affairs minister, if you can believe that. The guy who's supposed to be the chief diplomat is talking about annihilating anybody who's ever wronged Israel. Yeah, I mean, this is just it's more of the same. So you can either be faithful to that mindset or you can be faithful to Jesus, but you can't be faithful to both. At some point, you have to say enough's enough. Charlie Kirk reached that point. You have to say enough's enough. This is too much. You need to show some grace, show some forgiveness, bury the hatchet, move forward, make peace. Let's go live our lives. But instead, it's going to be we're going to hunt down and kill anybody who's ever said anything mean about us. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. So with that said, let's do our ad read, our ad break, because I probably need to take a breather and stop, take a breath. Right. Geopolitics with Ghost. Be back in a minute.
What is the Sovereign Alliance? The Sovereign Alliance are a collection of leaders and countries that are aligned not in the vision for their countries, but against a vision that has been thrust upon them. I believe that the Sovereign Alliance is less a battle for something and more a battle against something. They are against globalism, collectivism. They are against the rules-based international order.
Sovereign Alliance, the latest addition to Badlands Rise merch, available now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
They say confidence starts with a smooth skin. And baby, Soft Disclosure Lotion delivers.
I swear by this stuff. Like, I kid you guys not. This is the first lotion I've ever had in my entire life that, like, I don't get ashy after I put it on any part of my body. Like, my hands are always dry, and my hands have not gotten ashy without, like, rinsing them through water and washing them with soap since I started putting Soft Disclosure on. Like, it is black man approved. I kid you not.
Black man approved. You heard him. And let's be real. If it can handle his hands, it can handle anything.
Feet are like, they get so dry, like the heels of them, it'll just kind of like flake off. Like, but with Soft Disclosure, once you put it on, like it starts to absorb it.
Yeah, he went there. Don't worry, we won't show you his feet, but trust us, they're smoother too. Soft Disclosure Lotion is made with aloe, goat's milk, honey, and our exclusive oil blend that actually restores your skin barrier. Visit softdisclosure.com, use code BADLANDS, and get 15% off.
All right, welcome back. Geopolitics with Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, as we get into, we're already well into the second hour of the show, but today is October 7th, the October 7th 2-year anniversary of the totally real flying go-kart extravaganza. And I can't stop making fun of the fact that the IDF allowed flying go-karts to penetrate the most highly secured border in history. Even Charlie Kirk pointed out how silly that whole thing was. And we're just expected to believe that it happened, or that it happened the way that they explained it to happen. 7 hours with no response. 7 hours. Wow. All right, so let's get into other things outside of the Middle East, because we've talked about Israel enough. And we could talk all day about it, but it doesn't change anything. Let's go to Caracas. Actually, you know what? Before we go to Caracas, let's talk about the Trump Venezuelan boats act of kindness thing. Sorry, StreamYard has decided that it's going to be difficult to get that. Let me scroll up and down. Okay, by the way, Cam, that's a hilarious ad that Cam and Alpha made. And Cam was on the Book of Trump last night. We did Dennis Rodman, the relationship between Dennis Rodman and Donald Trump. Next week, he's going to come back and we're going to do the relationship between Dennis Rodman and Kim Jong-un. And probably the one of the chapters I look the most forward to in terms of the Book of Trump. So I'm very excited about next week's show. And you will see how important that relationship was, basketball was, to world peace. All right, so from RT, U.S. strikes on Venezuelan boats, an act of kindness, Trump says. This was when he was speaking at the Naval Academy on Sunday. Says the president argued that the operation saved lives by stopping the flow of drugs into the country. U.S. President Donald Trump has described the recent strikes on alleged drug cartel-operated vessels off Venezuela as an act of kindness, saying the operation helped save thousands of lives at home. The U.S. has destroyed at least 4 boats in international waters since September, as Trump continues to accuse Venezuela's left-wing government of using narco-terrorists to smuggle drugs into his country. Speaking at the U.S. Navy's 250th anniversary ceremony in Norfolk, Virginia on Sunday, Trump praised the military for supporting efforts to blow the cartel terrorists the hell out of the water. It's a pretty tough thing we've been doing, but you have to think of it this way. Every one of those boats is responsible for the death of 25,000 American people and the destruction of families, he said. So when you think of it that way, what we are doing is actually an act of kindness. Trump said the strikes eliminated a key sea route used to traffic fentanyl and other drugs in the United States. Nobody wants to go into the water anymore, he said. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has rejected the allegations of running cartels, saying his government has eliminated all major trafficking networks and vanquished prominent gangs. He accused Washington of using the fight against cartels as a pretext to topple his government and seize Venezuela's natural resources. Yeah, and that is an interesting one. Now, before we go deeper into Venezuela, I wanted to do a little side quest. It'll be a short one because this definitely deserves the attention that I'm going to give it. Because one of the people that Trump calls out during that speech is this guy. Felix. Wait, am I saying his name right? It's Felix Mauricio. Felix Mauricio. Okay, so I'm just going to read my take from rather than go find the exact clip. Actually, you know what? Felix? You're 100 years old, my man. You deserve the full clip. I have the full clip here, and I am going to play the full clip. We should listen to this, because if any of us live to be 100 years old and fight in a world war, we deserve to be honored with the full clip. So we are going to honor Felix Mauricio this moment.
From Midway to the Coral Sea to Leyte Gulf, American sailors fought the most epic naval battles in history. And at Normandy, the Navy led the greatest armada ever formed to deliver the single largest invasion force the world has ever seen. One of the sailors who did it was Felix Mauricio, who enlisted at age 18 and trained right here in Norfolk, trained right here. On D-Day, June 6th, 1944, Felix manned an amphibious landing craft that did 6 harrowing runs to Omaha Beach. You all know about it. These are all famous fights. He delivered hundreds of American troops into the battle, including his brother Sal. Felix lost so many of his friends that day, but he kept fighting. He kept going out there, getting more soldiers, getting more of everything. He just kept coming. They couldn't stop him, and went on to serve in the Pacific under the great Admiral Nimitz. In February 1945, he spent his 21st birthday landing Marines on the blood-soaked sands of Iwo Jima, one of the bloodiest, toughest battles ever. Historic battle. 6 months later, he was aboard the USS Talladega in Tokyo Bay. When Japan surrendered, they said, I don't think we want Felix hitting us anymore. And he retired as a chief petty officer in 1966. This year, Felix celebrated his 100th birthday, and he is here this afternoon as a living testament to the glory of the United States Navy. Wow.
Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, you're kidding me. You're not going to cut to him? That is absolutely shameful. That was the wrong feed, obviously. Let's cut to this feed. Yeah, the White House feed.
To the Coral Sea, to Leyte Gulf, American sailors.
Shameful.
60. And he is here this
All right, let's do that again. Let's cue it up again.
afternoon as a living testament to the glory of the United States Navy. Wow. That's great. He looks good. Felix, you look better than I do. I'm not happy about this, Felix. No, they don't want to mess around with him. And Felix, we salute you. Thank you very much. Incredible. 100 years.
Absolutely, Felix. Mr. Mauricio, rather. Great respect for him. And just for those who didn't quite catch all that, let me just summarize it. I have it summarized here, and it is he was a boat driver. He was like the landing craft that they would go on, the famous Saving Private Ryan scene of them landing at Normandy. So he was the driver of like the little landing craft that would come back and forth, and he would go back and forth from, and those guys, I mean, they were in danger. Like they were catching bullets, catching mortar, catching sniper fire. Omaha Beach. So he was landing it back and forth. Omaha Beach is the one from Saving Private Ryan. It's where the most intense fighting happened. And so he went back and forth to Omaha Beach. Then later he was at Iwo Jima. So Iwo Jima is in the Pacific. Those are probably the two most famous battles of World War II, I would say. Normandy and Iwo Jima. Not very many people, I would imagine, can say that they served in both the European theater and the Pacific theater. Not only did he serve in both theaters, but he was at both battles, driving the landing craft. And then he was on the USS Talladega in Tokyo Bay when Japan surrendered. And that it's pretty significant. And then he lived long enough to be sitting at the 250th anniversary ceremony at the Naval Academy, listening to Donald Trump talk about saving the country. So that's a pretty amazing life. Reminds me of my grandmother. My grandmother was in the Navy Waves program. She was naval intelligence, had the highest classification of security clearance. She was in the room when they called in and said that Japan surrendered. She was like the first of 10 people that knew that the war was over. So definitely salute to Felix Mauricio. All right, so let's go to Venezuela. That was a good speech too. I recommend going and listening to the speech. It's a good speech. It's back to Venezuela. The reason that I think my jacket is like disappearing is because the room I'm sitting in has like the exact same color wallpaper. So I think it's like picking up the background of the wallpaper and thinking that my jacket is the wallpaper. It's my own fault. I blame myself. All right, so this is from RT. Caracas, let me make this a little bigger. Caracas warns Washington of embassy bombing threat. Venezuelan extremists plan to attack the shuttered U.S. diplomatic mission in the capital. The country's top lawmaker has said, Venezuela has warned Washington of a plot by extremist groups to plant explosives at the closed U.S. embassy in Caracas. National Assembly Speaker Jorge Rodriguez made the announcement on social media on Monday, saying the government had notified the United States through 3 different channels about a serious threat. Quote, through a false flag operation prepared by extremist sectors of the local right wing, there are attempts to place lethal explosives at the U.S. embassy in Venezuela, Rodriguez wrote on Telegram, adding that a European embassy had also been notified without specifying which one. The U.S. embassy has been closed since 2019, but remains guarded by staff responsible for security and maintenance. Diplomatic relations were cut that year after Washington recognized opposition leader Juan Guaido as Venezuela's interim president, rejecting Nicolas Maduro's re-election as illegitimate and imposing sweeping sanctions on Caracas. Tensions between the two countries have spiked in recent weeks following U.S. military strikes on vessels off Venezuela's coast, which Washington described as part of an anti-drug campaign. The attacks, which killed more than a dozen people, were linked by U.S. officials to criminal cartels allegedly operating under the protection of Maduro's government. American officials have accused the Venezuelan leader of maintaining close ties with traffickers and describing him as effectively a kingpin of a narco-state. Maduro has dismissed the allegations, accusing Washington of seeking to overthrow him and seize Venezuela's natural resources. Caracas has already stepped up its defense posture to counter the increased U.S. Military footprint in the region. Last week, the New York Times reported that senior aides have been urging U.S. President Donald Trump to pursue Maduro's removal, though the U.S. leader has denied any plans for regime change. Okay, so yeah, before I get to the big news about the diplomacy being broken off, there's this from General Flynn, and I take this with a grain of salt because I think General Flynn does put out a lot of mis and disinformation. Okay, so wait a minute. Yeah, so if this is from October 4th, he says, leader of the largest foreign terrorist organization in this hemisphere, if not the world, Nicolas Maduro's days are severely numbered, and there will be no mini Maduro remaining in his place. He says, we need the duly elected and very strong, quote-unquote, Iron Lady, Maria Corina and it's her name is Maria Corina Machado, as Secretary Rubio refers to her. It's interesting that he's citing Secretary Rubio when he postures her. But in my extensive experience successfully hunting high-value targets, I recommend that Maduro get out while the getting is good, allow the people of Venezuela to live under democracy of their own free will. For you and your crony thugs, your days are numbered. Terrorism, criminal activities like drug smuggling, child sex trafficking, and other illicit activities are over. The POTUS is deadly serious, and he grows more serious by the day. And he is quote posting FBI Director Cash Patel, who says, this is all from October 4th, so 3 days ago. Maduro isn't just corrupt. He's an indicted narco-terrorist dictator with a $50 million DOJ bounty. Under my leadership, the FBI is choking off every dollar, every account, every enabler. America will never be a safe haven for his blood money. And what's interesting about that is he then cites a Fox News article that says FBI busts Maduro-linked money laundering network spanning multiple nations. FBI Director Cash Patel vowed America will never be a safe haven for Maduro's blood money. This is by Rachel Wolf. Let's just listen to Rubio. It's a 2-minute video.
Mr. Secretary, when it comes to the drug trade, Venezuela is not the most problematic country, but it is a major U.S. adversary. Should we expect smugglers coming from friendly U.S. allied nations like Mexico and Ecuador to also face unilateral execution from U.S. forces? And if so, will the administration seek authorization for the use of military force?
You're wrong in your question. Number one, Venezuela is a major source, and the reason why is the following. And I've seen a lot of this reporting, and it's fake reporting, and I'll tell you why. It says that somehow Venezuela is not involved in the drug trade because the UN says they're not involved in the drug trade. I don't care what the UN says. The UN doesn't know what they're talking about. Maduro is indicted by a grand jury in the Southern District of New York. That means the Southern District of New York presented the evidence to a grand jury, and a grand jury indicted him. And then a superseding indictment came out that was unsealed about 1.5 years ago that specifically detailed Maduro's actions. So number one, let there be no doubt, Nicolas Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker in the United States, and he's a fugitive of American justice. Number two, for cooperative governments, there's no need, because those governments are going to help us identify him. They're going to help us identify him. Now, they're going to help us find these people and blow them up, if that's what it takes. They're going to help us with it. I don't know if you saw yesterday, Trinidad, a country that has suffered greatly from all these drugs coming out of Venezuela, they were congratulating us for it. They thought it was a great thing because they've suffered from it. So we're going to continue to hunt for, like we always have, but this time we're not just going to hunt for drug dealers with the little fast boats and say, oh, let's try to arrest them. No, the president has said he wants to wage war on these groups because they've been waging war on us for 30 years and no one has responded. But there's no need to do that in many cases with the friendly governments, because the friendly governments are going to help us. They may do it themselves, and we'll help them do it.
They may do it themselves, he says. That is certainly interesting. And then we have to harken back to
Democrats are adamant that we must protect the health care.
Very rude of Fox News to do that. Nobody asked for that. And I would point to Colonel McGregor, who says that Venezuela actually isn't involved in what they're being accused of. And then we'll get in. I see people asking, what do you go further in what you mean when you say that Flynn, why Flynn puts this stuff out. Yes, I will absolutely do that. And it is excuse me. Stand by. Here it is. Sorry, it just took me a minute to find this clip. The clip was not properly labeled. That's why. All right, so this is Colonel McGregor on Ron Paul's show.
Doesn't make any sense, to be frank with you. First of all, Venezuela, contrary to popular belief, is not a major drug hub. And most of the drugs that have come out of Venezuela actually came out of Colombia and were transshipped. We do know that there are generals in the Venezuelan army who've lined their pockets, taking essentially bribes to let the drugs that come out of Colombia come out of Venezuela. But there aren't very many. The real issue, I think, for everybody is the oil and gas reserves. But the oil and gas reserves that are really plentiful, probably the greatest in the world, are actually quite deep. And we have the finest oil and gas technicians and engineers in the world. So the real question is if
Okay, so I think that McGregor is giving you a lot of signal right here. Let's just go back to the Fox News article and we'll address this real quick. It says the FBI says 2 men have been indicted in connection with an alleged money laundering scheme tied to Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro's children. The indictments come after a years-long investigation that dates back to 2019 when the FBI's Miami field office launched the probe based on indications that Arik Kamarzik opened U.S. bank accounts for Maduro's children and their U.S.-based associates. Suspicious activity reports allegedly showed that Kamarzik received wire transfers from individuals and businesses in Venezuela, according to the FBI. An undercover operation in 2022 revealed that Kamarzik and his associate, Erasmar Carbajal, agreed to move $100,000 of what the FBI believed to be sanctioned money belonging to members of Venezuela's government. The FBI said the men moved about $25,000 into the U.S. The Bureau noted that when confronted about the situation, Kamarzik was not alarmed. Rather, he called it sexy business. What the hell is that? FBI Director Cash Patel said money laundering schemes linked to Maduro were criminal lifelines for his regime. Quote, Nicolas Maduro is not just another corrupt strongman. He is an indicted narco-terrorist dictator with a $50 million bounty on his head. From the United States Department of Justice, Patel said in an exclusive statement to Fox News Digital, quote, his regime's money laundering schemes are nothing more than criminal lifelines for a failing dictatorship. And under my leadership, this FBI will continue to choke off every dollar, every accountant, every enabler. America will never be a safe haven for Maduro's blood money. Yeah, and that is absolutely interesting. Let's just read a little bit more into these two guys. On September 25th, both Kamarzik and Carbajal were indicted in Florida. Kamarzik was indicted on charges of money laundering and conspiracy to commit unlicensed money transmitting, while Carbajal was indicted for conspiracy to commit unlicensed money transmitting. Carbajal traveled from his home country of Uruguay to the Dominican Republic, but he was deported on October 2nd. The deportation flight made a layover in the U.S. where Carbajal was arrested. The FBI said. Meanwhile, Kamarzik is believed to be living in Venezuela, according to the Bureau. Quote, the Maduro regime's alleged efforts to attempt evasion and conduct money laundering in the United States through third-party individuals will not go unchecked. FBI Miami special agent in charge, Brett Skiles, said in an exclusive interview or exclusive statement to Fox News Digital, quote, Kamarzik and Carbajal's indictments should demonstrate the FBI's commitment to investigating alleged international money laundering involving Office of Foreign Asset Control's sanctioned governments and individuals. Skiles added, the U.S. and our financial institutions will never be a safe haven for international corruption and money laundering, particularly those for those countries which pose significant risks to our national interests. That's absolute bullshit because all the big banks absolutely allow money laundering for preferred vendors, people who engage in child trafficking and all that stuff. They absolutely are allowed to use U.S. banks. It's just people who oppose central banking like Maduro. They're the ones who are not allowed to use U.S. banks. So let's get into why this is happening, what I think is happening, and then we'll talk about this new development that just broke this afternoon. Pull up this map. We like maps. We haven't looked at maps in a while. I was getting some map withdrawal. So again, you heard what McGregor said. McGregor said there aren't really that many drugs being coming out of Venezuela. They're all coming out of Colombia. So Colombia, a lot of their drug operations are down in this region, the border in this part of Colombia, also all up and down the border here with Venezuela. The two largest, I think drugs are occurring like to some extent all over Venezuela, but it's relatively small. I mean, probably no bigger than what you're finding, in the U.S. in terms of drug manufacturing or shipping. And it's these two areas right here, and their name escapes me. It's Zulia, I think, is one of them. I think one of them is Zulia is right here, and then the other one is what is it? Trichia. Let me see if I can get a better map. Terrain. And as Maduro was saying, they walk across the border. They're basically operating deep in the jungle. So you can see like this valley right here between these two mountain ranges. Zulia, that's where one of them is. That's like a very high traffic area. You can see how there's a bay right here. So that's obviously from a shipping standpoint, moving the drugs out of the jungles of Colombia down the mountain into this bay. You could then very quickly put it on a boat and ship it out. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? And then the other region is over here where they're being manufactured in this national park, and the jungles over here, and then walked across to this area. And then there's a river right here that runs all the way out to Guyana City and out towards the coast. So you could see why, just from a geographic standpoint, the river goes all the way into Colombia. Like, you could just put the drugs on a boat here in Colombia and then just send the boats all the way up the, what is this? The Rio Orinoco, the Rio Orinoco, the Orinoco River. Send it all the way up the Orinoco River to the Pacific Ocean. Okay. So going after these drugs, I mean, there's no doubt that these drug cartels are going to have influence in Venezuela. They're going to have a presence in Venezuela. McGregor mentioned generals in the Venezuelan military being in on the cut, like they're taking cuts in order to allow a lot of these drugs to move through Venezuela. But that doesn't mean that Maduro is like the leader of this cartel. It's important to also note that these cartels predate Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar did not invent the cartel. Okay. United Fruit Company invented the cartel in like the 1890s when they built all the railroads, every single railroad that runs from California and Texas through Mexico, through Central America, to Colombia, and all throughout South America. They all were built by United Fruit Company in the 1890s in the Central American trains, Central American railroads, rather. And United Fruit Company is now known as Chiquita Banana. That's like Chiquita. And they have been busted multiple times. The reason they're called Chiquita is because in the 1980s, they were caught running drugs for the cartel. And so in order to fix their branding and rebrand for American consumers, so moms still bought their bananas at the grocery store, they renamed themselves Chiquita. And they got a little fun lady with the banana hat, and she's like, "Oh yeah, Chiquita Banana, but buy my bananas." The thing is that Chiquita was then caught in 2007 doing the exact same thing, running guns rather for the cartel, and which really means running guns for the CIA, because the cartel is just a proxy for the CIA. Point is that it's really foolish to think that this guy Maduro came into office in 2013 and just became the kingpin of like this organization that's existed for 130 years at least. And quite frankly, this is probably like a franchise of the East India Company and, Five Eyes and like all that. So it's really silly to think that Maduro is like the one in charge of all this. I think that just requires a very low IQ. Now the question is why the kayfabe? Why go through all this nonsense? Why the song and dance? Why the song and dance from General Flynn and Cash Patel, who are promoting a known deep state shill? Maria Corina Machado is absolutely a deep state shill. And I can just pull up her Wikipedia once again, as I've done many times before. Here's Maria Karina Machado, right? She is a Venezuelan politician and industrial engineer who is currently opposition leader in Venezuela. She served as an elected member of the National Assembly of Venezuela from 2011 to 2014. Machado entered politics in 2002 as the founder and leader of the vote monitoring group Sumate. Sumate is an NGO. We'll talk about them in a second. We've talked about them before. Alongside Alexandro Plas. She's the national coordinator of political party Vinte Venezuela. In 2018, she was listed as one of BBC's 100 women. Of course she was. In 2025, Time magazine listed her as one of the world's 100 most influential people. When is she going to get her own reality television show on VH1? I don't know. Machado is regarded as a leading figure of the Venezuelan opposition. The Nicolas Maduro government in Venezuela has banned Machado from leaving Venezuela. You know what's interesting is that Maduro is called a dictator, okay? He's called a dictator. But this woman is allowed to walk around Venezuela. She's been doing this for the past 25 years, basically. She is allowed to walk around. She's allowed to criticize the government. She's allowed to criticize Maduro. She's allowed to call Maduro a dictator. She's allowed to say all these mean things about Maduro. Right? She's allowed to parrot the talking points of the U.S. State Department. And yet she's not thrown in prison for doing any of this. Now, they say she's not allowed to leave Venezuela, but what's the sauce on that? And I know for a fact that there was like a prisoner exchange between one of her friends and the Biden regime, where the guy that was given back to Venezuela was Alex Saab. Alex Saab was a quote-unquote defector who in 2019 went to the, or I think it was 2018, 2019, went to the U.S. government to inform on the Maduro regime and inform on the cartel and tell the DEA and the FBI and the DOJ all these terrible things that were happening in Venezuela related to the cartel operations, okay? And then in 2022, when he was being prosecuted for certain crimes that he was doing that were tangentially related to all this stuff, his lawyer came out and said, actually, everything that he did in 2019, he was doing with the full knowledge and blessing of Nicolas Maduro. Nicolas Maduro sent this guy, Saab, to the U.S. to inform on the cartel. And then in 2023 or 2024, Biden does a prisoner swap where one of Maria Machado's friends, who was arrested for being basically a subversive traitor, is sent back to the U.S. and Saab is sent back to Venezuela. And then Maduro, instead of throwing this guy in prison or like executing him for treason or whatever, he appoints him as the head of industry. He becomes the industrial industry leader. Like they have like a minister of industry. He becomes the head of the entire ministry of industry. Okay. Yeah. This guy is really like he must be informing on Maduro, right? He was telling everything that the Trump administration needed to know about the inner workings of the Maduro government, the inner workings of Venezuela, all that stuff, and then goes back to Venezuela and is appointed to a top position while Maduro is arresting all these other corrupt officials. Yeah, and then if I scroll down here to Sumate, like the section in her Wikipedia, it says here, the founding of Venezuelan volunteer civil organization Sumate resulted from a hurried encounter between Machado and Alejandro Plas in a hotel lobby in 2001, where they shared their concern about the course that was being shaped for Venezuela. Machado said, quote, something clicked. I had this unsettling feeling that I could not stay at home and watch the country get polarized and collapse. We had to keep the electoral process, but changed the course to give Venezuelans the chance to count ourselves, to dissipate tensions before they built up. It was a choice of ballots over bullets. Important to remember that Venezuela at this time was considered like the number one economy of the Americas, like Latin America, and was kind of considered the premier example of how these countries could actually function and have like prosperity. And yet they're talking about the country being polarized and collapsing politically and all this nonsense. Let me keep reading. Samate led a petition drive for the 2004 Venezuelan recall referendum of Hugo Chavez, then president of Venezuela. According to CBS News, Chavez branded the leaders of Sumate as conspirators, coup plotters, and lackeys of the U.S. government. Here's a picture of her, by the way, meeting with George W. Bush in the White House in May 2005. After the referendum, members of Sumate were charged because they held a referendum, right? Hugo Chavez wins the referendum, all right? And then he goes and he charges these people who like orchestrated the referendum and were basically trying to overthrow the government with treason and conspiracy, accusing them of plotting with the U.S. State Department to overthrow the government via Operation Gladio under Article 132 of the Venezuelan Penal Code for receiving financial support for their activities from the National Endowment for Democracy. That's the organization that Mike Benz always talks about as like the most subversive organization. If you have the National Endowment for Democracy operating in your backyard, your government is about to be overthrown. In 2005, Machado faced conspiracy charges stemming from the $31,000 grant from the National Endowment for Democracy for nonpartisan educational work. That same year, the New York Times said she was the Venezuelan government's most detested adversary, a young woman with a quick wit and machine gun fast delivery who often appears in Washington or Madrid to denounce what she calls the erosion of democracy under President Hugo Chavez, and stated that the Venezuelan government considers her a member of a corrupt elite that is doing the bidding of the much reviled Bush administration. Yeah, okay, so there you go. And then, of course, like she has all the backing from the World Economic Forum, and that entire crowd loves her. And then the people who oppose all that stuff, the Putins, the Maduros, the Sovereign Alliance, call her a coup-plotting corrupt elite, basically. Okay? So going back to what General Flynn posted, why would General Flynn post this stuff if why would General Flynn boost this woman? Well, General Flynn, when he boosted this woman, remember, what he actually said was he was quoting Rubio. He was saying, as Marco Rubio says, the Iron Lady, we should really support this woman, right? Well, if you're the U.S. and you're about to launch a land operation in Venezuela, and it sounds like that's what's about to happen. Trump was talking about a land operation in Venezuela, potentially. Then you would also want to make sure that your guy, Maduro, has narrative shielding, because you don't want the cartels to move in and kill his whole family. So you would do things like double the reward for his arrest, right? $50 million bounty on his head. You would start arresting people who maybe are bad actors, bad people who are laundering. Maybe they're laundering money out of Venezuela for actual bad actors in the Venezuelan government who are trying to escape Maduro. Maduro has been arresting corrupt officials for the past 6 years. There's been like rolling corruption waves where people just get arrested, like these high-ranking officials get arrested, thrown in prison. Now they're talking about doing a land-based invasion into Venezuela. I wonder if we're going to see Maduro get arrested, extracted, taken back to the U.S. Maybe, General Flynn said, you should willfully surrender before it's too late. Maybe Maduro will willfully surrender. I'm sorry. Take me away. Take me away. No. Please take me away. Take me away. No. And then the U.S. military moves in, and with the Venezuelan military operating together, because the Venezuelan military is like all over the place. 25,000 Venezuelan soldiers deployed to key areas where the cartel operates. They together then wipe out the cartel, clean up the cartel. What is the CIA going to do then? How are you going to make money if you can't sell coke? Maybe this is where all the fentanyl is coming from. Maybe the fentanyl is actually being produced in the jungles of Colombia and Venezuela, beyond like the reach of the Venezuelan authorities, right? I don't know. We'll see. But that's what I think is happening. That's my hot take on Maduro. And the last story we'll do before we get out of here is Trump breaking off diplomacy with Venezuela. Trump breaks off diplomacy with Venezuela. The move could pave the way for an attempt to force President Nicolas Maduro out of power, the report says. U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered his diplomats to stop making overtures to Caracas, paving the way for a, quote, potential military escalation or an attempt to remove Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from power, the New York Times reported Monday, citing sources. Bilateral tensions have flared up amid what the U.S. claims is a campaign against drug cartels. Trump reportedly conveyed the instruction to his special presidential envoy, Richard Grenell, who has been in charge of negotiations with Maduro and his government during a meeting with senior military officials last week, the New York Times reported. The NYT said that the president had grown frustrated that Maduro would not voluntarily relinquish power and that Venezuelan officials continued to deny involvement in drug trafficking. The paper reported that officials have described multiple military operations for escalation, which, quote, could also include plans designed to force Maduro from power. According to the NYT, before diplomatic channels were severed, Grenell was trying to make a deal that would avoid a larger conflict and give American companies access to Venezuelan oil. However, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio found the efforts unhelpful and creating confusion. In recent weeks, the U.S. has claimed to have destroyed several alleged drug boats off the coast of Venezuela, with strikes killing more than a dozen people in total. U.S. officials claim the Venezuelan government maintains close ties with cartels and have called Maduro effectively a kingpin of a drug narco-state. Colombia is really the narco-state, not Venezuela. While refusing to recognize him as a legitimate president, publicly, however, Trump has denied seeking regime change in the Latin American country. Maduro has vehemently rejected U.S. accusations of drug links and has framed Washington's actions as attempts to topple him. He warned that if Venezuela were attacked, it would declare a state of an armed struggle. Caracas has already stepped up its military posture to counter the increased U.S. military footprint in the region. And the other important takeaway from this, as Colonel McGregor pointed out, was the resources. Guyana, of course, is a proxy state for the British Crown. It's part of the British Commonwealth technically, and there's a big oil belt that runs right here where Trinidad and Tobago is. There's a giant oil belt that runs in front of Guyana and across Venezuela. And most of it's pretty much almost exclusively right here in front of Trinidad and Tobago. It's almost exclusively in front of Venezuela. Now, Venezuela says that Guyana is actually half the size of what it claims to be. It's actually, this western half of Guyana is actually part of Venezuela. Guyana argues that with the backing of the big U.S. oil companies, mind you, they argue that this oil belt is actually in Guyanan waters and all that oil should actually belong to Guyana. And the Guyana government is very eager to give those oil rights to, Chevron and the big oil companies. So the discerning viewer can kind of like piece together what's happening here, guys. It's corporate America just being a bunch of oligarchs, as they always are. Ruthless imperialism, basically. So we'll see what happens. But if you consider the fact that you want to keep an eye on the cartels, you want to give your guy Maduro a little bit of narrative shielding to make sure he doesn't get killed or his family doesn't get killed. And then you also recognize that the State Department is irredeemable and full of these blood-sucking parasites, traitors. You can't just go about this from a straightforward manner. You have to basically put out rhetoric inside the State Department. We're going after Maduro. He's a bad guy. We hate him. That dreadful drug cartel Maduro. So people the simpletons in the State Department who are working for the bad guys hear all this and they're like, oh yeah, they're going after Maduro. Maduro's a bad guy according to them. So, that's the kayfabe, I think, in my opinion. I think that they're doing that for narrative shielding for Maduro. Anyway, all right. And I think, you know what? We got one more thing we got to do related to GART. Let's talk about that real quick. And that would be Cocoa Beach. So, guys, please hit the thumbs up if you've enjoyed this show. I wanted to talk about GART 10, Cocoa Beach. The tickets are now on sale. Grab them now. A special early bird price between now and October 15th for the next 8 days. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/events to snag the lowest price for virtual tickets as well. If you get your virtual ticket, not only do you get the discount price, but I think we're doing a exclusive live stream. The first one's going to be on Thursday, is my understanding. Thursday afternoon. I'm sure John will announce that tonight or tomorrow on Devolution Power Hour, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be Thursday afternoon. So go ahead and get your ticket. If you're planning on being there, look forward to seeing y'all there. We've already been to this place before. 2 years ago is my first GART. Awesome venue. Great time. They got a tiki bar on the beach. Hopefully the weather will be pretty good so we can at least hang outside on the beach. Probably won't be warm enough to go swimming, but looking forward to it, man. So looking forward to seeing everyone in Cocoa Beach. And with that said, I think we will go ahead and cue the music. So and this is Geopolitics with Ghosts.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.